Okay, so I've got 6:30, so we'll go ahead and get started and we won't be so far ahead that anybody couldn't get caught up with us. My name is Cheryl Pemberton. I'm with the Mid-Continent Public Library. I'm glad you all could join us this evening. I just have a few housekeeping announcements before I introduce our presenter. If you could keep your mic muted throughout the program, and if you have questions, just put them in the chat and Mark will answer as many as we can get to at the end of the program. I will include a link to a survey. I will put that in the chat. I'll put it at the beginning of the program, at the end of the program. And if you could just take a moment to complete that survey, we'd really value your opinion. Also, recipes and handouts will be going out to all of those who registered at around 7 o'clock. I think I set up for a delayed delivery. So don't feel like you have to rush to write everything down. If you registered, I think before 4 o'clock today, you should be able to get the handouts. And in that case, I want to just take a moment to introduce you to our speaker. Mark Lyons, also known as the Garden Troubadour, is a master gardener, consultant, and educator. He's been gardening since he was 10 years old, and his first success came when he grew a foot-long, 2.5-pound cucumber and was featured in the local paper. Today, Mark runs a successful business called Green Thumb at Your Service, dedicated to inspiring and coaching people on growing their own food. Based in Palatine, Illinois, Mark travels around the country to deliver dynamic presentations on vegetable and mushroom gardening, harvest preservation, and home cheese making. He's also an accomplished singer-songwriter and performer who plays guitar, ukulele, and washboard. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Mark.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, for inviting me back again. It's always a pleasure to do programs for the Mid-Continent Public Library. Tonight's program, well, I should say, first of all, that Cheryl introduced me as the Garden Troubadour, but tonight I'm the Dairy Troubadour, because we'll be talking about dairy products. Most people think of dairy products as something that's made by a conglomerate, like a Sargento cheese or a Borden's dairy or whatever, but many of these dairy products you can make yourself, and that's what we'll be talking about today. Now, normally when I do this program live, I usually will make butter before your eyes just to show you how it's done, and I'll bring in sour cream and yogurt and buttermilk for everybody to taste. Unfortunately, we can't do that virtually. But the good news is that among your handouts, you'll be getting some recipes, so you'll be able to make some of this stuff yourself. So I'm going to share my screen and bring up my slideshow here. So bear with me a moment while I do that. Just need to get rid of the... Oh boy, this is not, there we go, oh shoot. Okay, bear with me a moment here. There we go, it disappeared.
There
Okay.
you go.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right. Well, Cheryl already introduced me, so I'm going to skip all that. But I will mention that I've been making cheese and dairy products for about the last 10 years or so. I got my start when I was in Vermont on vacation, visiting a working dairy farm. And while thumbing through the gift shop, I found a book on home cheese making. And as I was thumbing through the pages, a moment of madness came over me, and a voice whispered in my ear and said, "Wouldn't this be fun to try?" And when the madness had left me, I discovered my arms were one book heavier, my wallet a few dollars lighter. How that happened, I have no clue. Well, eager to try out this new hobby, I decided to make the 30-minute mozzarella. And I'd like to say that my first attempt at making this was delicious and flavorful, but I'm just not that big a liar. But I did improve. Let's just say there was room for improvement, but improve I did. And I branched out to making all different kinds of dairy products, which is what we'll be talking about today. What we'll be talking about is I'm going to talk to you about the ingredients used in making the different dairy products, a little bit about the equipment, and then the individual dairy products themselves. And then afterwards, I will take questions. So let's begin with ingredients, starting with the largest ingredient of all, milk. Now, if you look at the overall composition of milk, you'll see that milk is mostly water. It has a little bit of milk sugar, about 5%, about 3.5% fat, a little bit of protein, and a small amount of minerals. Generally, in order to make any of these dairy products, we have to coagulate the milk. We have to separate the solids from the liquid. And this is done through the action of either rennet, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, bacteria, acid, or some combination of the three. When you do this, you cause the protein part of the milk to unite with the mineral portion, minerals mostly being calcium, the protein being casein, and you create an insoluble solid known as calcium caseinate. And we separate this out from the liquid portion of the milk, the whey, and then these solids are either converted to cheese or sour cream or butter or something of that nature. Now, when it comes to milk, we're all familiar with the big three: cows, goats, and sheep. But throughout history, people have made use of the milk of many different animals. Let's face it, to own your own herd of cows or sheep or goats was a luxury that not everybody could afford. So you had to use whatever milking species were available. And here are just some of them. The camel, I should point out, is the only non-ruminant species of mammalian milkers that's out there. Camels are monogastrics, and I'll explain to you the difference between a monogastric and ruminant in a little bit. Here's some other examples. The water buffalo. This is traditionally where mozzarella cheese came from. In fact, the full name is mozzarella di bufalo, mozzarella from the water buffalo, milk of the water buffalo. Now, milk usage has a long history behind it. Goats were most likely the very first dairy animals ever domesticated. Archaeological evidence suggests that the ancient peoples in what is now Iran and Iraq were selectively breeding them as far back as 8,000 to 9,000 before Common Era. They're small and sturdy. They're able to eat just about anything you can put in front of them, and they're very easy to keep. They are easy to keep healthy and happy and milk producing, especially if you live in a cool mountainous climate. Much easier to care for than larger animals like cows and sheep. Also, several breeds of goats have hair that can be shorn and used for clothing, so you can get dual use out of some of the different species of goats. And goats will have an excellent feed conversion rate. They'll give you excellent nutritional value for the feed you have to put into them. Now, as the concept of domesticating and milking animals spread from the Middle East, farmers adopted local beasts as their milk-giving ruminant of choice. And again, this depends on the climate, the geography, and the population. Again, many animals like the yaks, the buffalo, the mare, the reindeer, etc. The ancient Hebrews held milk in high favor. The earliest Hebrew scriptures contain abundant evidence of the widespread use of milk from the very early times. The Old Testament refers to a land which floweth with milk and honey some 20 times. The phrase describes Palestine as a land of extraordinary fertility, providing all the comforts and necessities of life. In all, the Bible contains some 50 references to milk and milk products. All of these have their own special adaptations that make them better for certain environments and needs. Cows, for example, were domesticated from longhorn wild aurochs around the same time and place as goats. Since at least 3000 BCE, cows have been bred primarily for their milk, which tends to be richer than goat's milk, and due to their size, much more abundant than what you get out of a goat. However, cows being heavy eaters of a grass diet, cows really work best in temperate climates. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's one notable exception to the ruminant rule, that's the camel. The camel is the only milkable domestic animal that isn't a ruminant. And camels are particularly adapted to the arid desert regions of the Middle East. As such, the milk of the camel has been a staple food in parts of Africa since 2500 BCE. China is one of the very few old world societies that didn't develop some sort of reliance on milk. And most likely this had to do with the local flora. Most of the natural vegetation in China, particularly during the rise of the ruminants, consisted of poisonous plants like wormwood and episode, making it unsuitable for grazing. However, when nomads, especially the Mongolians, came bearing milk, the Chinese were quick to take up the beverage, and by 1300 BCE, they were using milk to dilute their tea. Now, when it comes to using milk, there are some general things to keep in mind. First of all, make sure that your milk is of the freshest and best quality. If you buy your milk from the supermarket, wait until you're ready to use it before you open it. And if the milk doesn't look good, if it has an off flavor or a sour taste, or generally just looks yucky, don't even bother. Discard it and buy fresh milk, because you won't get good dairy products out of bad milk. Like anything else, garbage in, garbage out. Cow's milk is the most popular here in the United States for making dairy products. Now, if you want to buy your own cow, buy a Jersey. Jersey cows have their milk has a high butterfat content, and the milk will give you a high yield of dairy product. Also, the animals have a very sweet temperament. Over at Shelburne Farms in Burlington, Vermont, they use brown Swiss cows, very similar, sweet temperament. Milk has a high butterfat content. So if you're looking to buy your own cow, those are a couple of choices for you. Now, goat's milk, the difference between goat's milk and cow's milk is that goat's milk has much smaller butterfat globules. That makes goat's milk more easily to digest than cow's milk. This is why many people that have a hard time drinking cow's milk are much more able to drink goat's milk. Goat's milk is also naturally homogenized. Now, milk straight out of the cow, if you just let it be, the cream is going to naturally rise to the top. That's known as cream line milk. In order to prevent that happening, they have to heat treat and pressurize the milk to keep those fat globules in solution. That's known as homogenization. You don't have to do that with goat's milk, because goat's milk, the cream doesn't rise to the top. It's naturally homogenized. So if you want to get the cream out of goat's milk, you have to use a cream separator. If you want to buy your own goats, here are the 4 to consider: the Nubian, the Alpine, the Sayans, and the Toggenburg. Now, if you want to milk sheep, sheep's milk tends to be very high in protein and vitamins. Sheep's milk is also the driest of the big 3. It contains 10% less water than cow's or goat's milk and gives you twice the amount of solids than goat's milk or cow's milk. Now, here in the United States, there is only one breed of sheep that can be used for milking, the East Frisian. So if you wanted to make a dairy product like Manchego cheese is typically made from the milk of a Manchego sheep. There are no Manchego sheep in the United States, and you can't get any, because the USDA takes a dim view of exporting livestock, for that matter, many other agricultural products across the pond. Any of you who's ever come back from a trip abroad and tried to bring in fresh fruit or anything like that, customs will bust you faster than if you had drugs on you. They are very strict about that. Similarly to goat's milk, sheep's milk is naturally homogenized. So if you want to get the cream out of it, you need the cream separated. Culture. If you buy store-bought milk, you'll find that most store-bought milk is generally pasteurized. Pasteurization is a process to heat treat the milk, raise it to about 190 degrees, and cool it quickly. And this basically kills all the bacteria in the milk. Whereas raw milk contains natural flora for use in making cheese and other dairy products, pasteurized milk has no bacteria. So you have to use a starter culture or some kind of a culture in order to create some of these milk products. Now, one thing to keep in mind, when you're making a dairy product like kefir or yogurt or cheese, think of it as throwing an exclusive party. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you, when you throw a party, you do not open your front door and you shout to the world, "Hey, I'm having a party here. Anybody who wants to come in, come on in." No, you don't do that. You send out invitations to people that you know and trust, friends, relatives, friends of relatives, relatives of friends. It's very similar with dairy product making. Now, if you took a carton of milk, you opened it up and you put it on your counter and left it there for, say, 3-4 weeks, just imagine what it would look like, smell like, and taste like. That's because you've opened up the door to your milk house, and you've invited all the bacteria in the world to come into your milk house. Some of them are good bacteria, some of them are bad bacteria. When you're making a cheese or a dairy product, you have to be snobbish. You want to invite only the right kind of bacteria. Bacteria that are still going to coagulate the milk, just like would normally happen in nature, but do it in a way that's going to create something that looks good, smells good, and tastes good. So these are just some examples of some of the different kinds of culture that you use to make different kinds of products. I get all of my cultures and equipment and everything from the New England Cheesemaking Supply Company in Deerfield, Massachusetts. They're a one-stop shop. They have it all. I'm not aware of any similar places in Missouri or other places. If anybody else is aware, please feel free to share in the chat. Rennet. Rennet is a substance that's used for controlled coagulation of milk. Rennet is mainly used in cheese making. The enzymes in rennet will act on the milk protein and do as we discussed earlier. They'll cause the casein, that's the milk protein, to unite with the calcium in the milk, creating calcium casein, or curd, which then is separated from the whey, and then either through the activity of gravity or pressure in a cheese press, all those individual cheese or curd pieces are squeezed together to form a solid mass. And that solid mass is aged to create what we call cheese. Now, where does rennet come from? You are looking at it. This is the fourth chamber of a cow's stomach. And if any of you out there feel like saying, ew, believe me, you will not hurt my feelings. It used to be many years ago that when cheesemakers wanted to make cheese, when they'd slaughter a cow, they would save this fourth chamber known as the abomasum, and they would hang it up and let it dry, and then they would cut slices out of it and throw it in their milk pot when they were ready to make cheese. Cows are what are known as ruminants. They digest food a little bit differently than you or I do. You and I and camels are what are known as monogastrics. When we eat food, we chew it up, we swallow it, it goes into our stomachs, the acids break it apart, and then goes into our small intestines, and then the enzymes kind of break it into further components there, and that's it. Cows and other ruminants do it a little bit differently. Cows will chew up a little bit of grass, just slightly, then swallow that half-chewed mass. It will go into the first chamber of their stomach, the rumen, which is like a giant fermentation vat, where bacteria start acting on the food mass, breaking it up, synthesizing volatile fatty acids, synthesizing B vitamins. Then after a while, the cow will belch up this mass and start chewing it. That's known as chewing the cud. Then it'll chew that for a while, then it'll swallow it again. This time it will go into the second chamber of the stomach, known as the reticulum, which is a large honeycomb structure. The food mass spreads out over this where more bacteria can work on it. Then the food passes from the reticulum into the omasum, the third chamber, and then into the abomasum, which is what you're looking at here. This is the true stomach. This is where all the enzymatic digestion takes place. So this is where we get rennet from. Now, there are some different rennets. Most of what you're seeing here, these are animal rennets that come directly from that fourth chamber of the cow's stomach. But if you're a little bit more vegetarian and you'd like to use something a little more veggie friendly, there are vegetable rennets that you can use, which come in both a liquid and a tablet form. There are rennets made out of thistle. There are also some other different vegetable rennets. Chymosin, which is not in the picture here. Chymosin is a very high quality rennet that's very suitable for vegetarians. This is what commercial cheesemakers use. Your Saputos, your Sargentos, your Crafts. Junket, meanwhile, is a very weak form of rennet, which can be used to make some soft cheese. Can't use it to make hard cheese. It's not strong enough to fully coagulate milk. All right, we've talked about the ingredients. Let's talk about some of the different dairy products. Starting with butter. What is butter? Butter is merely butterfat, water, milk, and proteins. Butter may also contain salt at about 1 to 2%. There's also unsalted butter, which is also known as sweet butter. Under United States law, butter must contain a minimum of 80% butter fat. In France, this minimum is 82%. So the butter you get in France is actually a little bit richer. Butter that is home churned can be as high as 86%. So if you take that recipe that you'll be getting in your handouts, you churn your own butter, you'll have the richest butter that you can possibly get. Butter has a very long history behind it. Butter is one of the first accidental solutions to the problems of milk preservation. Very early in the history of domestication, travelers like shepherds and farmers would start carrying around their milk drinks in bottles made of sheep or goat skin. Besides water and alcoholic beverages, the only other drink that would have been toted around this way is milk. Left to set in these containers, the cream would have naturally separated and come out on top. Combine this with a day or more of being shaken around in a hip flask, and it's easy to see how one of these workers might have opened up their milk pouch and inadvertently discovered butter. By 2000 BCE, this haphazard churning process had become more standardized. In Arabia and Syria, women would pour milk into larger jugs made from the whole leg and thigh of a goat. They would then suspend this jug from beams in the family tent and swing it around until butter formed. Now, although butter has the same nutrients as milk, butter could sit around longer and still be usable. It quickly became both nutritionally and symbolically important, figuring into countless mythologies as a signifier of abundance and creation. One of the very first references comes from a 9th century etiquette manual from India. It suggests that Hindu brides be given milk, honey, and butter on their wedding day. In some areas like Tibet, fermented dairy products like butter tea, along with the butter itself, are still a staple of the diet. Butter was also known in biblical times. He said to Sarah to take 3 measures of meal, knead it quickly, and make cakes upon the hearth. And it is said that he went to the herd and fetched a calf, tender and good, gave it to be dressed, and he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed and set it before them, and they did eat. That's out of Genesis. The traditional butter making process is very simple. You have to separate the cream from the milk. You want to store the cream in a cool place for several days, and then churn that cream into butter. Some different types of butter. There is sweet cream butter, which is churned from fresh cream and has a mild creamy flavor. Sweet butter is made by heating the cream and adding some mesophilic starter culture. One of these, for example. I'm never in the picture, but it's a starter culture that coagulates milk at a lower temperature. Ghee, or clarified butter, contains no milk solids. Ghee is best suited for frying because it doesn't splatter. And during the Middle Age, butter was always clarified for cooking purposes. Buttermilk. What is buttermilk? Buttermilk originally was the liquid that was drained from the churn after you made butter. After you've whipped up that cream and you got the butter fat solids out of it, the liquid that was left was known as buttermilk. The buttermilk that you buy in the stores, however, is made by adding bacterial starter culture to pasteurized skim milk. And once again, here's some buttermilk starter culture. It contains different bacteria to coagulate that milk so you get what we know as cultured buttermilk. You can make your own buttermilk. It's just simply buttermilk culture, some milk. You can use the fat-free milk, a little bit of heat and a little bit of time, and voila, that cultured buttermilk, which is great for making buttermilk pancakes. Yogurt. Yogurt is another accidental food. If the shepherds of Arabia and Syria were to skim off the cream or alternatively remove the lump of butter from the cream they formed, they'd be left with skimmed milk. Without any kind of refrigeration and under the blazing hot sun of the Middle East, it wouldn't have taken long for this milk to turn acidic, ferment, and curdle. The result was yogurt. Yogurt is another great way to preserve the nutrients from milk. Yogurt could be sun-dried or stored fresh under a layer of oil. And long before the health food craze hit the United States, yogurt fans were already extolling its medicinal properties. A medicinal text dating back to 633 Common Era was dubbed yogurt as a therapeutic item. Recorded history states that Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongol Empire, and his armies lived on yogurt. Yogurt was introduced to Europe by a Turkish doctor as a medical treatment, and it saved the life of French King Francis I, curing him of stomach troubles way back in the 16th century. A Russian professor, Ilya Mitichnikov, was the person most responsible for bringing yogurt to the Western world. It's one of the easiest milk products to make, and some will claim it's beneficial for a long and healthy life. Now, when you're cooking with yogurt, you want to spare the heat. You want to keep the temperature below 120 degrees Fahrenheit in order to keep the culture alive. If it gets too hot, it will kill the culture. So if you're cooking with yogurt, you'll be better off if you stir that yogurt in at the end of the cooking process, for example, to thicken a soup. When cooked for too long a period of time, yogurt has a tendency to separate. Now, if you want to avoid this separation, you can add a stabilizing mixture. To make the stabilizing mixture, you want to combine a half a teaspoon of flour or cornstarch and 1 tablespoon of milk or water. Blend that into a paste and then mix in 1 pint of yogurt. Heat this over medium heat. Stir it continuously in one direction until it comes to a boil. Lower the heat, let it simmer until it thickens about 5 minutes. Once it thickens, the yogurt may then be safely cooked and it will not curdle. Cheese. Excuse me 1 second. Here. Now, I actually have a separate class all about cheese making. And once again, this is another one where I will actually make a cheese before your eyes, and I'll bring in some cheeses that I've made for people to taste. Once again, we'll do that here. But we can still talk about it, and you've got some recipes to work with, or you will when Cheryl emails them to you. What is cheese? What is this thing called cheese? Once you have yogurt, it's very easy to get cheese. One way to make cheese is all you have to do is drain the watery natural yogurt, separating the solid curd from the liquid whey, then salt the curd, and the salt will cause the curd to shrink and expel whey, and then either through gravity or pressure, you can make yourself some cheese. Now, cheese is basically a food consisting of the coagulated, compressed, and usually ripened curd of milk separated out from the whey. The word cheese comes from the Middle English chese, from the Old English kesse, and from the Latin cessius. And if I mispronounce any of these, my apologies. Latin and Middle English and Old English are not my first languages. Cheese is also one of the earliest foods known to mankind. It dates back to the initial domestication of animals back in 9000 BCE. You can find references to cheese in the ancient artifacts of the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and the Chaldeans. By 2000 BCE, cheese had become a luxury item in Egypt, with the recipes heavily guarded by priests and manufacturing scenes appearing in murals decorating kingly burials. In biblical times, cheese was considered a staple, along with almonds, honey, and wine. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 17 to 18. So if you consider yourself to be a religious person, then may I humbly suggest that you should be eating more cheese, because if it was good enough for the army of the Israelites, it should be good enough for you. Cheese was also an important food to the ancient Greeks. The deity Aristeos, the son of Apollo, was considered the giver of cheese. Now, if you remember your Greek mythology, the Greek god of wine was Dionysus. So I can imagine that when Dionysus and Aristeos got together, that was some party. Homer sang the praises of cheese in the Odyssey, and Greek Olympic athletes trained on a diet of which cheese made up a large portion. So you know that we just recently completed our Olympics. And if we are not bringing home enough gold medals from the US sports team, then may I humbly suggest that perhaps they should be eating more cheese. Because if it was good enough for the Greek Olympic athletes, and by the way, the Greeks who invented the Olympics, it should be good enough for our athletes. The Romans picked up the art of cheese making and they refined it. The Romans picked up on the Greek traditions. They gave each of their soldiers a daily 1-ounce ration of cheese. They also invented things like smoking, using herbs and spices, and curdling agents other than rennet. In Europe, cheese making branched into 1,000 local specialties that incorporated regional products and production secrets. For example, and I mentioned this earlier, real mozzarella, also known as mozzarella di bufala, is made in the Campania region south of Rome from the milk supplied by 100,000 descendants of a herd of buffalo brought to Italy in 7000 CE. So if you want to sell mozzarella in the European Union, it has to come from the Campania region. Similarly to Champagne must come from the Champagne region of France. Parmesan cheese must come from the Parma region of Italy. They are very strict about this in the European Union. You can make a manchego-like cheese or a Parmesan-like cheese, but you couldn't sell it as Parmesan cheese in Italy because the milk didn't come from the right spot. Cheese is one of the earliest foods known to mankind. As I said earlier, the very first cheese factory opened up in 1815 in Bern, Switzerland. And the very first American cheese factory was established in Rome, New York by Jesse Williams. Hope you're taking good notes. There'll be a quiz afterwards. Just kidding. Some big cheeses in history. In 1840, to celebrate Queen Victoria's wedding, farmers in Somerset, England made a cheddar measuring more than 9 feet wide and weighing 1,100 pounds. Not to be outdone, the townspeople of Cheshire, Massachusetts, created a cheese weighing 1,200 pounds, which was presented to President Thomas Jefferson in honor of his presidential victory. Once again, when we make cheese, it's very similar to making other dairy products. We add bacterial culture, acid, or the bacterial culture creates its own acid when it chews up the lactose in the milk and gives off a waste product of lactic acid. This acidifies the milk and prepares it for coagulation. Then adding some rennet then causes the milk to coagulate. These coagulated protein lumps are known as curd. And as we heat the curd slowly, we drive out more of the liquid whey. And if we add some salt, it further drives that whey. Then we compress these curds. This is what gives us our cheese. Varieties in color, texture, and flavor are due to variations in time, temperature, and bacteria, and also the use of some other cultures like molds. If you've ever had blue cheese, you probably noticed that it comes with this bluish-green mold on there. That's what makes blue cheese what it is. Without that bluish-green mold, it wouldn't be blue cheese. Devonshire clotted cream. Devonshire clotted cream is a thick cream that's made, it's a scalded, thick, buttery cream with a nutty caramel flavor. It's associated with dairy farms in England in the provinces of Devon and Cornwall. It was originally made by farmers to use up their excess milk. The milk was left to stand for several hours so that the cream would rise to the top. The cream was then skimmed and placed into pans that were floated in trays of boiling water. The cream would then thicken and develop a golden crust. Nowadays, to make Devonshire clotted cream, the cream is extracted using a cream separator. And if you've ever had Devonshire cream teas, Devonshire clotted cream is one of the essential ingredients in this product. Crème fraîche. What is crème fraîche? Crème fraîche is a matured, thickened cream with a rich texture and a slightly nutty, tangy flavor. The thickness can vary from the thickness of sour cream to a thickness as thick as margarine. Crème fraîche is easily made in France from unpasteurized cream, which contains all of the necessary bacteria. Here in the United States, where nearly all of the milk is pasteurized, to make crème fraîche, you have to add sour cream or buttermilk culture, or a little bit of the sour cream or buttermilk itself, to the cream in order to get the crème fraîche, to get it coagulated. What can you do with crème fraîche? You can use it as a topping for fruit or pancakes. Crème fraîche also goes well with a hot loaf of sweetbread or stuffed into figs. Kefir. What is kefir? Kefir is known as the champagne of milk. Kefir is a milk product that's not only that's not only coagulated, it's also fermented. The name kefir means good feeling or pleasure. Mountain people of the Caucasus regions of Russia, they believed it had healing properties and was a gift from God. Kefir was not known for many years in the West, but as I said, it was consumed for years by the Europeans, especially those in the Caucasus regions of Russia. Kefir is similar to yogurt, however, it differs from yogurt in the fact that it undergoes both lactic and alcoholic fermentations due to the presence of yeast in the culture. Kefir contains about 2.5% alcohol. No, this is not enough to get you drunk. If you try to get drunk off of kefir, you'll blow up like a balloon before you even get mildly tipsy. Kefir will yield a sourish, yeasty, sparkling end product. Also, when you make kefir, the milk is heated to a much lower temperature than for yogurt making, so more of the nutrients are preserved than what you would find in yogurt. Kefir is a nutrient powerhouse. The fermentation process makes vitamins, minerals, etc. very bioavailable, which makes it easier for the body to absorb and digest the nutrients in kefir. Kefir also contains a greater amount of probiotic than bacteria. Greater amount of probiotic bacteria, much more so than yogurt. You've often heard that if you want to get that good probiotic bacteria inside of you, eat yogurt. You can do an even better job by drinking kefir. Kefir can be served as a drink, or it can be used to make smoothies. It can be used to make cheese or a yogurt-like product very similar to Greek yogurt. Some research seems to demonstrate that kefir may also have cancer-fighting and blood pressure-reducing properties. So far, this has not been borne out in experiments in humans. It may, however, aid in digestive health. Kefir contains probiotic bacteria. Kefir also contains lactase, an enzyme which breaks down lactose. In a 2003 study of 15 adults unable to digest lactose, Ohio State University researchers found that drinking kefir reduced lactose maldigestion symptoms such as bloating, stomach pain, and gas by about 70%. French researchers have also shown similar findings. They've shown that kefir can speed recovery from diarrhea in infants. Sour cream. Sour cream is a fermented cream product that's created by fermenting regular cream with specific types of lactic acid bacteria. The bacterial culture causes the cream to sour and thicken, and the sour taste comes from the lactic acid produced by the bacteria. Regular sour cream contains roughly 18 to 20% butterfat. Lighter versions of sour cream contain about 40% less butterfat. Fermented sour cream is made from a combination of both milk and cream. Commercially produced sour cream may also have other thickening agents in there, things like gelatin, rennet, guar, or carrageenan. So if you want sour cream that doesn't have all those excess ingredients in there, make it yourself. And it's very easy to do with sour cream culture and some milk. Again, you'll see the recipe for it in there, but you'll basically heat the milk up to, I think it's about 86 degrees, pour in the starter culture, mix it up, cover it up, and let it set for about 24 hours. And then it should be well coagulated by then, and you'll have your sour cream. So that is heavenly homemade dairy treats in a nutshell. Before I take questions, I just want to bring up my contact information. If you have any questions that do not get answered tonight, or if you want more information, you are welcome to email me, mark@greenfurnitureservice.com. You're also welcome to check out my website for upcoming presentations. You can follow me on Google. You can like me on Facebook. You can check out my blog. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm sorry, X now. You can follow me on Instagram or link up with me on LinkedIn. In addition, I am the author and a co-author of a couple of books. As a garden coach, I've written a book called Gardening with Confidence, just a little guide that you can keep with you when you work in the garden. For a mere $7, you can take me home. I mean, you can take the book home. Might cost a little bit more than that. But as I said, it's a handy pocket guide to keep with you. The other book, Maturepreneurs Talk. If you've ever in your lifetime thought about telling your corporate job and your corporate overlords to stick it up the South Pipe, and you decided you wanted to start your own business, well, here's a book of people that have done just that. You can find the book on Amazon. There are a lot of really inspirational stories there, including my own. So again, if you're looking for some inspiration and guidance, if you want to be a mature entrepreneur, hence the contraction, maturepreneurs, this book will give you all the inspiration you need. And with that, I will take questions.
Okay, I've got a
Cheryl?
question that was from the beginning of the program. Does it matter if the cow's milk is ultra pasteurized?
The question is, does it matter if the cow's milk is ultra pasteurized? It certainly does. Ultra pasteurized milk is virtually worthless for making cheese. And I've seen it. The basically reason is you've cooked all the kishkis out of it. You denatured the protein, you destroyed the bacteria. There's nothing for bacterial culture to glom onto. You basically destroyed everything in it. Ultra pasteurized milk is great for preserving it, for giving it a long shelf life, but it's lousy for making cheese. I once had a hands-on class where the first session, I made sure to make that clear. The second session, the lab portion, one of my students was having a hard time getting the milk to coagulate. I said, let me see the carton. I took a look at it. Sure enough, it said ultra pasteurized. It just goes to show that if you can't be a shining star of leadership, you'll just have to serve as a bad example. So, yes,
is it very obvious on the container whether it's ultra pasteurized or not?
it says on the container, it should say
Okay.
ultra pasteurized.
Okay.
So you want to make sure if you're buying store-bought milk, make sure that it's pasteurized, not ultra pasteurized. Now, this can be a challenge if you want to make a goat milk product, whether it's a goat milk cheese or a goat milk yogurt or something like that. I don't know how it is in Missouri, but in my area, in the northwest suburban Cook County, I have found it almost impossible to find goat milk that is not ultra pasteurized. So if you can find goat milk that is pasteurized, not ultra pasteurized, treat that vendor well, because at least as far as I can see, it's very hard to find. That was a long-winded answer, but I hope I've answered your question.
We've got one comment. My ancestor wrote a poem about Thomas Jefferson's mammoth cheese.
Oh.
And question, do you have suggestions for creating a treat using dry milk?
A suggestion for creating a treat using dry milk. Yes. Basically with dry milk, you have to convert it to fluid milk. I believe, and I don't have it with me right now, I believe it's something like 1/3 of a cup of dry milk powder in 2/3 of a cup of water. Mix that up and you get fluid milk, and you can use that to make any of these dairy products. The great thing about dehydrated milk solids, dried milk, is that the dehydration process inactivates any bacteria. So you don't have to worry about bacterial contamination from dried milk. So, but basically, again, you have to convert it into a fluid milk. But if it's great, if you happen to find yourself someplace where you don't have ready access to fluid milk, you can make it yourself.
Okay. A comment, I tasted chocolate cheese once. Do you know if that's hard to make?
Chocolate cheese. That's the most unique combination. I don't think it would be hard to make, but I think if you're talking, if this is a hard cheese, or actually any kind of cheese, the chocolate will probably be the ingredient that you put in last. If it's a soft cheese, after the solids have been compressed and all the whey has been expelled, then you'll want to mix in that chocolate. How much to mix in, you'll kind of have to experiment and chocolatize it up to your taste. If you're making a hard cheese, you'll want to mix that chocolate in, when just mix it up within the curd pieces before you put them in the press. Similar to if you're making, say, like a Havarti with dill. You get the curds out after you've completely expelled all the whey. You mix in that dill, and then you put it in the press, and then you start compressing it. Be a similar thing with the chocolate and the cheese. Never heard of chocolate cheese. I wonder how that.
We had a question, do you have recipes that you will email us after the class? As we mentioned at the beginning of the program, yes, the email with recipes and the handout will actually went out at 7 o'clock. This email had a lot of attachments, so I split it into 2 different emails. So hopefully it won't clog up your email server. If it does, email me directly and I'll see what I can do. If you're not receiving the handouts, email me and I'll see what I can do tomorrow about sending them out in a series of smaller emails.
Sure. As a preview, some of the recipes that you'll see there, you'll have recipes for many of the dairy products we talked about: kefir, sour cream, buttermilk, butter. And there's also some different cheese recipes on there. Cheese can be easy or hard to make depending on the kind of cheese that you want to make. The recipes that I've given you are fairly simple to make. They do not require a lot of investment in terms of culture or equipment. So they're very, as I said, they're quite simple to make. If you're making these cheeses and you decide that you really, really like it and you want to move on to something a little more difficult, requires a little more effort, I recommend going to the website of the New England Cheesemaking Supply Company. They're on the web at cheesemaking.com. They're a one-stop shop. They've got everything you need to make all of these products. And in addition, you'll find some different recipes there as well. A little more challenging than the recipes I'm sending you. The recipes that I'm sending you, by the way, come from the book Home Cheesemaking by Ricky Carroll. I don't know, do you have that book in your library, Cheryl?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up again. Let's see, there was a question I had. I can't think of it. No, I can't think of it, darn.
Other questions that are in the chat room?
Oh, I did want to say, tonight's presentation was recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel only for a month. And so if you missed something at the beginning of the program, it should be up. What is tomorrow? Okay. I hate to say when because it's somebody else who's in charge of that. So I'm thinking it'll probably be up late tomorrow, if not Thursday. And you can watch it. You'll be able to watch the program for a month.
Do we have other questions, Cheryl?
No, I don't see any yet. Oh, I know what I was going to ask about the crème fraîche.
Yes.
I made that at home one time, and I took like cream, like, I don't know, a cup and a half of cream, and added like a tablespoon of buttermilk, and then left it on the counter overnight, which is what the recipe said to do. Does that sound like a healthy thing to do, or should I find another method?
It should be all right. Did you heat the milk up first?
No.
Okay. The recipe that's in the handouts recommends that you heat it starts with half and half. You can use half and half for light cream. Heat it up to about 86. Add the starter culture, or I guess you could try using buttermilk like you did. And then you'll want to take it off the heat, cover it, and let it set for about 24 hours. It should be safe to eat.
Okay, I ate it, but I was a little nervous. Oh, here, I tried to make clotted cream once, but my oven would not stay on 12 hours, so it did not turn out. Any ideas for clotted cream?
Clotted cream is one of the few dairy products that's actually defied my every efforts to make it. There's a recipe in there that I've never been sure just how long to boil the milk. I usually wind up either burning the heck out of it or it doesn't get clotted enough. I've had clotted cream. I've been to County Devon in England, and I just can't seem to get it the way they do. So there's something I'm not doing right, and I've yet to find out what it is. So
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot of advice I can give you, but I would say if you can use that recipe and if you can figure out something that I'm not doing, then please feel free to share, because I'd like to make some myself one of these days and not have it turn into a bust.
Okay, so we have a challenge for everybody in the room. If you're able to make clotted cream, be sure and let Mark know.
I would appreciate it.
Mhm. And then take notes of what you did.
Yes, please do. That's another thing I should mention. When you're making cheese or any other dairy products, it's a good idea to take notes of what you did and keep a record of what you've been doing. This way, you want to note the milk that you used, how long you heated it for, what you used as a coagulation agent, things like that. This way, if you come up with something that is fresh and flavorful and that you did it right, you'll want to know what you used so that you can duplicate that. On the other hand, if it turns into a bust, as some early efforts did, you want to know what you did wrong so that you don't repeat it. So just a little bit of advice as you begin making cheese and dairy products.
Okay, and I put myself on the list of who's getting the handouts just to see, and I got them in my inbox. So hopefully everybody got the handouts just fine. And I can't wait to try and make. I actually want to try. My husband wanted yogurt, so I thought I can try and make some yogurt.
Other questions?
Okay, here's the directions about the clotted cream. The directions said they had to cook it for 12 hours at a really low temp, but since my oven would not stay on that long, I believe it was 220 degrees.
Try the recipe that you'll receive in the handouts. It starts with half and half, or light cream, not milk itself. But I've made that recipe. It comes out great. And furthermore, if you take that crème fraîche and you strain out the whey through a butter muslin inside a colander, you will get mascarpone cheese.
Oh, crème
So
fraîche that's been like
been
through a cheesecloth, or
you put it get a colander, a bowl, put some butter muslin in the colander, pour that crème fraîche into the colander, into the butter muslin in the colander, put it in your refrigerator for about 4 hours or so. You'll have all the liquid whey in the bowl, and what you'll have left is mascarpone cheese.
Yeah, because mascarpone is still pretty expensive. Okay, like I said, if you haven't received the recipes, email me tomorrow, see if they come in overnight. And if not, I will put them into smaller emails with fewer attachments.
Other questions?
Okay.
Well, if there are no more questions, then I will leave you with this.
Okay.
Oh, dairy isn't scary. You can make it yourself. You don't have to buy it from the grocery shelf. There's butter, yogurt, sour cream, and cheese. And friends, you can milk it for as much as you please.
Thank you very much, Mark. Okay, whoops, I got one question directly from me. There we go. Okay. If you can, the email that you received at 5:30, no, 6 o'clock, that said, here's the Zoom link, it has my email in it. So you want to, if you don't get that, your handouts by tomorrow morning, email me directly and I will see what I can do to cut them into smaller pieces. And thank you so much for Mark. We had a thank you for your musical ending. I always miss it when for some reason it doesn't happen. So I'm glad to hear it again tonight.
Yes, as you know, I have a different musical ending for all my programs. I have a garden song, I have a cheese song, a dairy song, and a mushroom song.
Okay, well, I think we'll go ahead and call it an evening. Good night, everyone, and we'll see you at our next virtual program. Good night, everyone.